Pacquiao doesn't get tired. I don't care if he's 50,000 years old. He's not going to get tired. He's a machine. I think the workload is going to be too much for Barrios.
The question hangs in the air of every boxing gym where a ghost of the past still works the bags. Can a legend truly come home again? Does the muscle remember the violence, the mind recall the strategy, and the heart still burn with the same inferno that once forged a champion? It's a query that whispers through the history of the sport. A romantic but brutal interrogation of time itself.
It actually took a very tough beating to get me out of the sport.
By Pacquiao.
Manny Pacquiao.
For Oscar de la Hoya, that question became a tangible reality. He stood amidst the familiar symphony of leather on leather, the scent of sweat and resin thick in his nostrils, and watched a specter take form. There, in the center of the ring, was Manny Pacquiao. At 46 years of age, 4 years removed from the sanctioned brutality of a professional bout, he was a living anachronism. Yet the figure moving before him was no relic. He was a storm, shadowboxing with a velocity that seemed to mock the very calendar that marked his birth. De la Hoya, a man whose own legacy is etched in gold and glory, had come seeking an answer. He needed to know if the fire still lived in the fists that had once humbled him. What he discovered was not a man chasing nostalgia, but a warrior answering the primal call of combat, a summons he was incapable of ignoring.
De La Hoya has 0 answers.
I was scared. And I said, you know what? The spark's not there. He doesn't have it. He doesn't have it.
I knew right there and then it was just over.
When De La Hoya finally spoke, his voice a low, resonant hum that cut through the gym's cacophony, it was with the weight of a man who had witnessed a miracle. He didn't offer platitudes about age being just a number, nor did he diminish the monumental task ahead. Instead, with a tone laced with a profound, almost startled respect, he spoke of the raw spirit he saw. He described a fighter whose every movement was a testament to an enduring love affair with the sweet science, a passion that time had failed to erode. He painted a portrait of Pacquiao, the pugilist who had achieved the impossible by conquering 8 divisions, now training with a paradoxical blend of youthful hunger and veteran sagacity. The punches were not just thrown, they were calculated, each jab a precise instrument, each combination of violent equations solved in a fraction of a second. His footwork was a library of stored knowledge, his body a vessel for 4 decades of ring warfare. De La Hoya confessed his own error in judgment, admitting he had expected to see a diminished version of the legend, only to be confronted by a fighter whose edge had been honed, not dulled by his time away. The conversation inevitably turned to motive. With a legacy cemented and nothing left to prove, why step back into the crucible? Pacquiao's answer was disarmingly simple, a declaration of unwavering devotion to his craft and an insatiable desire to test himself against the best of a new generation. De La Hoya, a fighter to his core, understood completely. He recognized that for men like them, retirement is merely a pause, a quiet intermission before the spirit demands another encore. He saw that the lightning-fast reflexes and devastating power hadn't vanished. Those 4 years of official inactivity hadn't been a period of decay, they had been a fallow season that allowed a deeper, more resilient fire to take root. At 46, Pacquiao was not just making a comeback, he was mounting a rebellion against the tyranny of age. For decades, young lions have clawed at the gates, eager to depose the kings. But this was different. This was the king, returning humbly to see if he could still tame the lions on their own terms. De La Hoya was transported back to his first encounter with that bewildering southpaw style, an elusive puzzle he could never solve. That same phantom was back, poised to remind the world of his place in the pantheon. De La Hoya shared anecdotes that built the mythos further, tales of Pacquiao's monastic discipline, a life balance between dawn runs, dusk meditations, and the sacred ritual of church services interwoven with punishing mitt work. He depicted a training camp that was less a preparation for a fight and more a spiritual quest, a fusion of athletic rigor and unwavering faith that made other fighters' preparations seem profane by comparison. Where critics saw age as a liability, De La Hoya saw it as a crucible that had burned away all impurities, leaving only a sharpened, unbreakable will. His reflections then turned deeply personal, revisiting the night he shared a ring with this force of nature. De La Hoya spoke with raw honesty about the beating he endured, recalling 15 precise punches that felt less like blows and more like divine judgment. He candidly admitted his own hubris, the disastrous weight cut that left him a hollow shell, and the chilling moment of realization that he was not fighting a man, but an elemental phenomenon. That memory, a ghost that had long haunted him, now served as the ultimate validation of Pacquiao's enduring greatness. He offered a glimpse into the inner sanctum of the training camp, a place governed by an old-world code of honor. Cameras were forbidden, fostering an environment of pure focus and mutual trust. He spoke of the clandestine footage that inevitably leaked, tantalizing fragments of Pacquiao's preparation, guarded by the unspoken rule that no true fighter would betray the sanctity of the gym. In these stolen moments, the world saw a man moving with the fluidity of a fighter half his age, his angles confounding, his combinations a blur. Even in these private rehearsals, De La Hoya noted, the warrior's instinct was lethally sharp. He described close-quarter drills where Pacquiao eschewed any notion of safety or restraint. There were no pulled punches, no easy resets. Every drill was executed with the intensity of a championship round, as if his entire legacy was riding on each perfectly timed pivot and each thunderous left hook. It was the relentless work ethic of a man not merely seeking to recapture former glory, but to carve out an entirely new chapter in his epic saga. As De La Hoya continued, the narrative arc of Pacquiao's life came into focus. From the meteoric rise of a young phenom to a global icon, from the halls of political power back to the unforgiving square of the prize ring. This journey culminated in the impending confrontation with Mario Barrios. This was no mere exhibition, De La Hoya warned, but a profound statement. He acknowledged Barrios as a young, hungry, and dangerous opponent, but one who was about to face a trial by fire unlike any he had ever imagined. Pacquiao's record was its own testament, but it was the unwavering fire in his eyes that convinced De La Hoya this was a legitimate attempt to conquer time itself. In his final words of reflection, De La Hoya offered a piece of advice to Pacquiao, a plea to remember the pure joy that first drew him to the sport. He spoke of the immense weight a champion carries, the hopes of a nation, the dreams of countless young fighters watching from afar. De La Hoya's ultimate observation was a simple, powerful truth. Legends don't truly die, they merely ebb and flow, falling only to rise again, more formidable than before.
Boxing like what is that for? Because you can apply that in habit. You become a habit. When you start boxing like, like that.
Across the gym, Oscar De La Hoya observed Mario Barrios. A mirror image of youthful ambition and a wry smile touched his lips. Here was a fighter in his physical prime, a sculpture of coiled muscle and fierce intent, shadowboxing against the ghost of the man opposite him. Barrios threw combinations with impressive velocity, but Pacquiao orbited him, a planet to his moon, hands held low in a gesture of casual mastery. De La Hoya recognized the oldest stratagem in the book, asserting dominance not through aggression, but through an unnerving calm that suggests a deeper, more dangerous power. Barrios possessed the physical arsenal, De La Hoya mused, but he lacked the map to navigate the labyrinth of a master's mind. The atmosphere tightened when a coach's sharp command, speed, sliced through the air. Barrios responded with a flurry of jabs, a piston-like assault. Pacquiao, however, simply wasn't there. He bobbed and weaved, his movements not just defensive but derisive, a subtle taunt with every near miss. De La Hoya saw it then, a flicker of a grin on Pacquiao's face, the quiet satisfaction of a king who knows his fortress is impregnable. That grin, he thought, could be the weapon that dismantles Barrios' confidence long before the first bell rings. The fight, he insisted, would be a contest of psychology as much as physicality.
You know, and my mouthpiece, which I had to make special, I would have ripped right through him because I was so tense. I don't know. I have no clue.
De La Hoya's mind drifted to his own youth, to the concussive shock of a perfectly timed jab from a seasoned pro. He wondered aloud if Barrios truly comprehended the weight behind a veteran's punch, not just the physical force, but the accumulated years of pain, purpose, and wisdom. Power, he warned his unseen audience, is fleeting, but the geometry of a perfect punch is eternal. A single, well-placed jab from a master could be enough to shatter a young man's ambition. That jab would be the herald of Pacquiao's reclamation of his throne. The gym fell into a reverent silence as Pacquiao transitioned to defensive maneuvers. He absorbed flurries on his arms and gloves, then answered with a single whip-like counter that sent a heavy bag recoiling violently. De La Hoya lauded the artistry of it, a defense that combined the grace of a ballet dancer with the brutal finality of a guillotine. He scoffed at the modern obsession with analytics and technology, arguing that true defensive genius is forged in the crucible of 1,000 sparring rounds, baptized in sweat and adversity. No algorithm, he declared, could ever replicate the prescient instincts of a fighter who has lived through wars. Pacquiao's instincts, he asserted, remained sharper than any code. His tone grew more contemplative as he considered the larger narrative. Pacquiao wasn't merely fighting Mario Barrios. He was in a contest with an undefeated opponent, chronology. He challenged anyone to truly grasp the toll that 4 decades in the hurt business takes on a man's body, mind, and soul. He refused to romanticize the journey, instead highlighting the daily reality of scar tissue, aching joints, and the quiet moments of doubt that plague even the most iconic figures. Yet Pacquiao was choosing this path, choosing the ring over the comfort of retirement. That choice, De La Hoya argued, was the most powerful punch of all. He recounted a moment of levity that was deeply revealing. In the middle of a drill, Pacquiao paused to correct a flaw in Barrios' footwork. The younger fighter's eyes widened in surprise as the master offered a piece of unsolicited, brutally honest instruction. De La Hoya saw it as a classroom moment, the old professor schooling the new student with casual authority. True mastery, he explained, confers the right to teach, and only a master teaches with such unvarnished clarity. If Barrios felt a sting of humiliation, it was merely the first lesson in the ring's harsh curriculum. De La Hoya described how the gym staff would instinctively create a perimeter when Pacquiao began his speed drills. The space transformed into a sanctuary, the rhythmic pop of his gloves echoing with the solemnity of a sacred rite. He joked that if every athlete dedicated themselves with half of Pacquiao's focus, sports would be populated by saints in shorts. Dedication of this magnitude was a rare jewel, and Pacquiao wore it like a suit of armor. This silent ritual, he contended, was more eloquent than any highlight reel. The conversation shifted to the unglamorous but essential art of recovery. De La Hoya detailed the veteran's morning ritual, a greeting of muscle tears and joint pain. He playfully teased that a young fighter like Barrios probably considers soreness a theoretical concept. He then outlined Pacquiao's meticulous regimen of ice baths, deep tissue massage, and disciplined rest, contrasting it with the complacency of younger athletes who often take their physical gifts for granted. This unseen discipline, he insisted, was the secret architecture of every great comeback. He painted a vivid picture of Pacquiao kneeling in quiet prayer before his training began. De La Hoya approached the subject with frankness, identifying faith not as a sentimental crutch but as a strategic asset. It was the source of his profound inner calm, an anchor in the chaotic storm of a fight. To underestimate a fighter's spiritual fortitude, he warned, was as foolish as to ignore his left hook. That tranquility gave Pacquiao a clarity in the midst of violence, ensuring every punch was delivered with purpose. De La Hoya recalled watching Pacquiao lift a weight that would have humbled Barrios. He described the veteran's movement not as a feat of brute force, but of graceful efficiency, his muscles coiling and releasing with the predatory elegance of a jungle cat. He dismissed the notion that age equates to weakness, observing that true strength is achieved when the mind and body achieve perfect synergy. This harmony, he declared, was the real wellspring of Pacquiao's power. He delved into the mental warfare of boxing, asserting that the sport is a 50-50 split between physical prowess and sheer belief. He noted Pacquiao's unshakable conviction in his own destiny, contrasting it with the flicker of doubt he imagined in Barrios' eyes after a missed punch or a gasp for air. A fighter's fate, De La Hoya proclaimed, is forged in the crucible of his own mind, and Pacquiao's mind remained a fortress. He directly addressed the chorus of pundits who had already written Pacquiao's sporting obituary. He ridiculed those who measure a fighter's worth in highlight clips rather than in heart and intelligence. A fighter's IQ, he argued, sharpens with age, becoming a more lethal weapon, not a duller one. Experience grants a veteran the ability to see the future, to anticipate and exploit mistakes that a younger fighter cannot even perceive. He challenged the world to value this hard-won wisdom over the fleeting spectacle of raw athleticism. The mood turned playful as De La Hoya imagined a satirical tombstone for Pacquiao's doubters. "Here lies your confidence," expired 6 rounds into the comeback. He chuckled at his own dark humor before adding that the most brutal truths are often veiled in jest. "The fighters who laugh last," he said, "are the ones whose hands are raised after the final bell." De La Hoya then waxed philosophical about legacy. He envisioned countless young children in the Philippines, their faces illuminated by screens, their hearts pounding with every jab Pacquiao throws. This return, he argued, was about more than a title belt. It was about transmitting belief, about proving that the impossible is merely a challenge waiting to be met. The echoes of this fight, he said, would resonate in gyms across the globe, inspiring a new generation to dream.
Manny Pacquiao.
He touched upon the business of boxing, noting that a legend's return commands a unique cultural gravity. Barrios might be the future, he quipped, but Pacquiao owned the headlines. The pay-per-view numbers would be driven by the irresistible drama of the comeback story. No modern debut, he questioned, could ever rival the narrative power of a veteran's last stand. He asserted that boxing is a sport built on stories, and few are as compelling as this one. He imagined Pacquiao on the eve of the fight, lying awake, his body humming with readiness, his mind cycling through 1,000 possible scenarios. Do true champions ever truly rest, he wondered, or do they simply enter a state of controlled insomnia fueled by an obsession with perfection? The nightmares of past defeats don't haunt them, they fuel them.
World champion in Barrios, who is only 29 years old and in his prime right now. Let me ask you this, do you think that he's punch resistance on his chin?
He scoffed at the idea that youth could intimidate a man like Pacquiao. He compared Barrios' confidence to a spark and Pacquiao to a controlled forest fire. Youthful energy without the guidance of wisdom often burns out quickly. A veteran's resolve, however, provides a steady, enduring heat. Barrios' ambition would crash against an unbreachable wall of purpose. De La Hoya invoked the memory of George Foreman's stunning knockout of Michael Moorer at 45. The world cheered, he recalled, but many dismissed it as a beautiful fluke. History, he warned, has a way of repeating itself, often to the astonishment of the unprepared. He predicted that a Pacquiao victory would follow that same script, forcing a complete reevaluation of what is possible. Finally, De La Hoya issued a direct challenge to the fans. Bet on the legend who never truly abdicated his throne. He reminded them that the heart of boxing beats strongest in these moments of generational collision when the old guard rises to defy the new. July 19th, he declared, would be more than a fight. It would be a referendum on the power of belief. He left the audience with a choice, to side with proven, timeless greatness or with the uncertain promise of potential. The pre-fight press conference was a theater of tension, every question a verbal jab. Reporters scribbled furiously as Pacquiao offered serene smiles from the podium. Barrios' radiating swagger promised the world a new king. The relentless flash of cameras captured every nuance of the psychological duel. De La Hoya, a silent observer in the front row, nodded knowingly at the sharp, calculated exchanges.
I have Pacquiao because his footwork, those calves that he has are incredible, are amazing. And when he jumps on his toes, and he confuses you and he throws punches from different angles.
At the weigh-in, the energy in the room became combustible. A hush fell over the crowd as Pacquiao took the scale, the digital readout confirming his readiness, followed by a deafening roar. Barrios met the mark, his gaze locked on his rival. The ensuing stare-down was a silent war of wills, a moment so charged that security personnel moved in to contain the palpable energy. The digital world erupted. Social media became a battleground of memes and fiery debates. Fans argued in real time, some mocking Pacquiao's age, others championing his indomitable heart. Hashtags trended globally, turning the bout into a worldwide event. Rival sports platforms pushed alerts, ensuring no one would miss the unfolding drama. The crescendo of noise built to a fever pitch, as if the entire planet was holding its breath. Bookmakers nervously adjusted their odds with every new piece of intel. The initial favoritism for the younger fighter began to erode as whispers of Pacquiao's ferocious sparring sessions leaked from the gym. Barrios' odds ticked up when his own training highlights made the rounds. Still, the smart money seemed to gravitate toward the veteran's unparalleled ring IQ. The betting lines reflected the fight's core conflict, but the narrative pull of the legend proved irresistible. Comeback fights occupy a sacred space in boxing lore. The sagas of Foreman and Hopkins demonstrated that age in the hands of a master can be a formidable weapon. Each return to the ring is an act of defiance, a reminder of the sport's raw, romantic appeal. Pacquiao's quest was a continuation of that epic tradition, promising another chapter for the history books. The allure of the veteran's tale was more potent than any single punch. In the final training montage, Pacquiao was a portrait of pure focus. His gloves were a blur against the pads, his feet a constant, rhythmic dance, his sweat a testament to his sacrifice. Barrios matched his intensity with youthful vigor, but his movements, while powerful, lacked the veteran's sublime polish. The sequence culminated in a tight shot of Pacquiao's face, his eyes fixed on a distant point, a look of serene and unshakable intensity. Even ringside fashion told a story. Pacquiao's entrance robe was a model of humble simplicity, adorned only with the flag of his nation over his heart. Barrios opted for vibrant colors and audacious designs, a visual declaration of his arrival. The contrast was stark, the quiet dignity of the veteran versus the flamboyant confidence of the challenger. The arena itself became a spectacle, a runway for fans eager to be part of the historic night. If the saga of this comeback has ignited your passion, show your support. Subscribe for more, like the story, and declare your prediction in the comments. It's time to see who truly understands the heart of a champion.